So when we talk about objects, what are the objects? So objects, when we discuss the objects in a programming, we should consider what we consider objects in a real world. Like this computer is an object. Okay. Similarly, the chair you are sitting in is an object. We can also have a similar chair, but that could be considered as a separate object. Okay. So although they look similar, these chairs look similar, but they are different objects. Now in an object, the status of the object might be different. Like one of the chair may be occupied. Okay, so it does not mean that all chairs in the world are occupied. So every object has a unique existence, unique identity. They may have a different status. One of them may be occupied. All of them may be, the other might be empty. But it is not all about the occupancy. The object may have different characteristics also. Like they may have a different size, they may have different colors, okay, and different weights. So whenever we talk about an object in programming, we talk about three distinct things. Its identity, its attributes, could be a color, size, occupancy, and the behavior. What does it do? What operations we can perform on the object. Okay, so it's like maybe whether I can find out whether the object or the chair in this case is empty, or if it is reserved, or if it is filled, or if it is clean, or I want to clean the object. So I can run certain operations on that. Okay, so in computers or the software that we write, the objects are often not tangible. The objects that you define are not tangible, just like date, timer, account, bank account, etc. So these are things which you cannot hold, but these are well-defined objects in any computer application. So let's take an example of a bank account. So we cannot hold bank account physically, but they exist in real world. So every bank account may have a different number. Okay, so the account number is a unique number. It's a unique existence. It may have an attribute called balance. So every bank account may have a different balance. And we can perform certain number of operations on each object. The same operation, I can deposit into this account and withdraw from this account. I can also perform a deposit and withdraw function on this another account. Okay, so whenever you're writing an application, a software application, how to identify an object in an application? What would you consider that in your application that could serve as an object in your program? So simply, like objects are simply nouns. You talk about those objects in a daily conversation, like conversation with someone else, and if you can put the word "the" before that thing, then you can safely treat them as an object in your application. Just like the chair, the document, the computer, similarly the bank account, the time or the event, these all can be treated as object in your application. So we have been developing an application over the time through many projects. Can anyone recall what application that we are actually developing?
Budget Buddy?
Budget Buddy application. So in Budget Buddy, what do you think if I were to ask you to convert that into an object-oriented approach, what could be treated as an object in Budget Buddy? The balance is, you can say the balance, but it could be an attribute associated with all objects that you create. Expenses could be an object, of course, and like if we were to categorize each object differently, like each expense differently, we can call it the grocery expenses or the car expenses related to any car. So we will be doing it in our next mini project, that we will be categorizing the budget according to different objects. Okay, and the objects cannot be something like, it cannot be verbs like the behavior, the running, the executing. So whatever is behavior, you translate that into as a function in your application. I will be talking about those functions in a while. Okay, So object-oriented approach, object-oriented design is not a language, it's just a paradigm. It's just like an approach to solve a problem. Okay, it is adopted by many different languages like C, C++, Java. They all support object-oriented paradigm. Now, when I were to ask you like create an object, let's say if I ask you to, we have a chair here, and I want to create like hundreds of chairs similar to that one. So what should be my first step? I want to create same chair. If I were to create, let's say 4 chairs, exact same chair, what should I have first in order to create? Yep. What's that? Identity. Every chair has a different identity. Or let me give another example. Let's say we are building up a housing community and we want all houses to look alike, same houses. So if you were to build the same houses, what do you need first? Yes? Blueprint or the floor plan. Once we have the floor plan, once we have the blueprint, we can replicate the similar objects, right? Similarly in programming, in order to create similar objects, we need to have a blueprint. We need to have a template. And in programming language, it is generally referred as classes. Okay, so class is a term which refers to the definition or the template or a blueprint. And it actually helps us create similar objects together, as same as like one object, second object, third object, all will follow the same template. We can modify a template a little bit, just like in housing floor plan, you can tweak a floor plan a little bit, but every floor plan is basically same. Every house will be built on the same floor plan. So you also have like an option that you can modify the base template a little bit. So these are some terms that whatever we are discussing right now, these are important from interview perspective also, and as well as of course the exam perspective. So class is basically a blueprint or a template. Based on that template, you create an object, as many objects as you want. Okay, and the class is also helpful in grouping the data of the related data together. It could be variables, attributes, or a group of functions. You will see it in a while that how it is useful. So graphically speaking, class is basically a top parent template. Based on that template, you can create 3 objects or 300 objects which would be similar to the template. Okay, how we create a class in Python, there is a keyword named class, and just like keyword of creating a function is def, similarly keyword of creating a class is class, and the syntax is like this. So you would write class and give it a name, and then whatever you write as an intended block of code becomes a part of the class. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So we have talked about object-oriented, compared it with the procedural programming. We have talked about objects, how we create multiple similar objects with the help of a template, which is commonly referred as class. Okay, and this is a very common interview question that how would you differentiate a class and an object? Okay, so you should be able to differentiate them. Next important thing associated with this term object-oriented programming is what we call method. Okay, so methods are nothing but functions, but they are defined or associated with the class. So method is a block of code that executes some instructions and may return a value. It's simply a function definition, def, which is defined inside the class. Okay, so when I ask you, like, there is a function which is defined inside the class, I can simply call it method. Okay, you might have already noticed me using a term methods periodically, like init method, int method, float method, len method. So these are the methods that are associated with the class. So Python is by default object-oriented language. Okay, By standard convention, self is the name of the first parameter in every method we define. It is referred to the class instance. It will be more clear when we proceed ahead and we'll do the hands-on demo. So while calling the method, we don't need to pass an argument for self parameter. So just like, for example, you define a function, the EF func, and the list of parameters here and some logic. Okay, so self should be the first parameter that you define in every method. This is not a keyword. This is just something which Python uses to identify or distinguish each object from each other. Okay. Again, it will become more clear, and there is also an activity here associated with PyPal, so you can also ask PyPal later on. And then we have initializer or constructor method. This is the name of the method. Double underscore init double underscore is the name of the method, and that method is generally referred as initializer, sometimes as constructor in other programming language. So as its name suggests, double underscore init double underscore initializer, it is meant to initialize some variables, whatever you want, and in your code. It is an optional thing to do, but you may define it. If you define it, it automatically executes whenever you create an object based on a class. Again, many things might not make sense right now. Until we jump into the hands-on demo, it will become more clear. So I'm just discussing the terminologies first because I need to demonstrate in the hands-on demo. I cannot do the hands-on demo right now before explaining it here. So initializer method is something which automatically executes. So when I define this function, how can I execute this piece of logic? So suppose that I'm writing a code, I define this function func with some list of parameters a, b, and how can I execute this logic? Calling the function. So I need to call this function and passing the value, for example, this, right? But the initializer method, it automatically executes. Whenever we use the template, class template, to create an object, it automatically executes by itself. We do not need to explicitly write its name to call it. Okay? And the purpose is, again, when you create an object, we want to initialize the object with certain things, certain values. Okay? Yep.
If you were to call the function, would it just do it twice then?
No. That's a good question. So for the initializer method, if your class contains initializer method, it automatically executes. If your class contains some other method like this, func, you need to explicitly call it. Okay? So only initializer method automatically runs. And how Python identifies that it's an initializer method? With this name. So this is the standard, or the keyword you can call it. It's a keyword to define the initializer method. Okay? The name of this method would be def double underscore init double underscore. Okay? All right. And as it says that the first parameter of any function or any method that you define, when I say method, it means I'm referring to a function inside the class. Okay? So the first parameter should always be self. Again, this self is not a keyword. You can give it any other name. Maybe you can give it this. But there should be a parameter. It actually helps Python identify which object we are talking about. Again, I keep on talking. It may be confusing for you right now until we actually start programming, and you will see how it works. So when I say this func is a method, self should be the first parameter, and if I do not have any other parameters, I can simply call function. I do not need to pass anything for this parameter self. Okay? When this function definition is like this, it has no other parameter. I do not need to pass any argument for this parameter self. If I have, let's say, a and b, it means that whenever I call this function, I need to pass the values for these two parameters. Okay? Make sense? So we do not need to pass anything for self unless we have any other parameters defined in our method, and you will see in the demo. Any question here?